The morning started like any other. It was a bright, golden Saturday in late spring, the kind where birdsong mingles with children's laughter and time seems to slow just enough for you to breathe it all in. At Lincoln Park, a sprawling patch of green tucked into the heart of Meadow Ridge, families gathered for what promised to be a perfect day. The scent of fresh-cut grass mixed with the sugary sweetness of melting popsicles. Parents lounged on benches beneath flowering trees, chatting over coffee cups while keeping one eye on the kids darting across playground equipment. The kind of peaceful suburban afternoon that makes you believe nothing bad could ever happen here. And in the middle of it all stood Rachel Connors, 32 years old, a graphic designer by trade and a mother by everything else. She had moved to Meadow Ridge just a year ago, looking for a fresh start after a difficult divorce. Life in the city had become too much, too fast, too loud, too uncertain. This town promised the opposite: safety, simplicity, and a sense of community she craved for herself and her daughter. Her daughter, Ellie, 3 years old, brown curls always tangled, a laugh that bubbled out like music. Ellie had a curious mind, a wild imagination, and a favorite pair of pink sneakers she insisted on wearing with every outfit, rain or shine. She loved climbing. She loved hide and seek. And she especially loved the twisty yellow slide at Lincoln Park. That's where she was that day, darting from the swings to the jungle gym with other kids her age. Rachel watched from a shaded bench nearby, sipping an iced coffee and smiling softly to herself, just enjoying the rare moment of peace. Ellie had just waved to her from atop the slide, shouting, "Mommy, watch me!" Rachel waved back. She glanced down at her phone for a moment, maybe to answer a text, a second or two at most. When she looked up, Ellie was gone. She blinked, stood, and scanned the playground. No Ellie near the slide, no pink shoes under the monkey bars, no tiny curls running across the grass. Her first thought wasn't panic, it was confusion. "She's probably hiding behind the slide," Rachel murmured to herself. "Playing a game. She loves hide and seek." She walked toward the play structure. No Ellie. Behind the slide? Nothing. She circled the playground, checked the sandbox, the climbing wall, the restrooms. Nothing. A creeping sense of unease began curling in her gut. She asked a nearby mom if she'd seen Ellie. "No, sorry, I just got here." Another parent. "Nope, haven't seen her." 5 minutes passed.
Then 10.
Now Rachel's heart was thudding. She was no longer searching calmly. She was shouting Ellie's name, over and over, louder and louder, hoping for a giggle in response, or the patter of small feet emerging from a hiding spot. But there was nothing. A few parents noticed and joined in the search. Others tried to keep their children calm as whispers of a missing child spread across the park. Within 20 minutes, a call was made to the police. 30 minutes later, the park was sealed off. Yellow tape cordoned off areas once filled with laughter. The Amber Alert went out at 5:42 p.m. Ellie's face, curly-haired and smiling, now flashed on the screens across the state. Her description was broadcast on radio stations and billboards. The alert read, "Missing child. Ellie Connors, age 3, last seen. Lincoln Park, Meadow Ridge. Wearing pink sneakers, white shirt with a sun on the front." As night fell, the playground transformed. Floodlights lit the area as uniformed officers began combing every inch of the park. Search and rescue dogs were brought in. Drones hovered above the tree line. Volunteers from all over Meadow Ridge arrived with flashlights, shouting Ellie's name into the darkness. But there were no signs of her. No torn clothing, no trail, no sounds, nothing. Rachel, numb with disbelief, could barely stand. She clung to a photo of Ellie, lips trembling, voice hoarse from calling her name. "Please," she whispered to every officer who passed, "please find my baby." The next day, helicopters were dispatched to scan the nearby woods. Divers were sent into a small pond a few blocks away. Detectives interviewed every parent and child who had been at the park that day. No one saw Ellie leave. No one saw anyone take her. Surveillance footage from nearby buildings showed nothing suspicious. It was as if Ellie had vanished into thin air, in broad daylight from a crowded park. The story went national. News trucks lined the street outside Rachel's house. Crime experts and psychologists debated possible scenarios on TV. Theories ranged from an opportunistic kidnapper to an elaborate child trafficking ring. But no theory offered what mattered most. Where was Ellie? 48 hours passed. 48 hours of desperation, of unanswered prayers, of a mother sinking deeper into a nightmare with each passing minute. Then on the third morning, just as hope seemed to dim entirely, something happened. A city maintenance worker was making his usual rounds through the park. He was assigned to clean the lesser-used public restroom facilities on the far end, near the old equipment shed. A part of the park most people didn't even realize was still open. He unlocked the rusted door. The smell hit him first. Sharp, chemical, musty. Like the room hadn't been used in weeks. Then he saw something on the floor. A crumpled piece of white fabric. He stepped closer. It was a child's shirt, white cotton, with a yellow sun on the front. And next to it, tiny pink sneakers, carefully placed side by side. The maintenance worker's hand trembled as he slowly backed out of the restroom. He didn't touch anything, just stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide, heart thudding like a drum inside his chest. He radioed it in immediately. Within minutes, police sirens were screaming through Lincoln Park again. Crime scene tape went up around the aging, graffiti-stained restroom facility. Forensics teams were called in. The area, long neglected and partially hidden behind tall hedges, had been skipped during the initial searches due to poor lighting and the assumption it had been locked. No one thought to check it thoroughly. Until now. Inside, the air was heavy and humid. Water dripped from a rusted pipe. The tile floor was grimy and cracked. And there, unmistakably, laid carefully, not discarded, were Ellie's belongings. The white shirt with the sun was unmistakable. So were the pink sneakers, positioned so precisely that it made the hairs on the back of Detective Laura Meyer's neck stand up the moment she saw them. This wasn't random, she muttered. Whoever did this wanted them found. But there was no sign of Ellie. No fingerprints on the items. No blood, no hair. Just two small pieces of clothing in a dark room that suddenly felt suffocating with implication. Rachel was notified immediately. She arrived at the scene not long after, escorted by two officers who tried, and failed, to keep her back from the line of yellow tape. "That's her shirt. That's Ellie's shirt," she screamed, pointing frantically toward the door. "And those shoes, those are hers." It took 3 officers to gently guide her back to a patrol car, where she collapsed into sobs so raw they silenced the nearby onlookers. The camera crews had returned, too, and now, with a chilling new clue, the story was exploding across the country. News anchors speculated on what the clothing placement meant. Was this the work of someone taunting the police? A kidnapper returning to the scene? Or was it something even more sinister? The community, once united in hope, began to fracture under the weight of fear. Parents kept their children home. Rumors swirled online. Theories grew darker, more accusatory. People began pointing fingers. One rumor hit Rachel like a punch to the stomach. Some people, internet commenters, podcasters, even neighbors, began suggesting that she might know more than she was letting on. After all, she was the only one who'd seen Ellie last. Some claimed it was odd that Rachel had taken her eyes off Ellie for even a moment. Others said the clothing's perfect placement in a restroom felt staged, like someone trying to mislead investigators. "She's too calm in interviews," some said. "She's too emotional," said others. Suddenly, Rachel wasn't just a grieving mother. She was a suspect in the court of public opinion. The police didn't formally name her as one, but the whispers were louder than the facts. Detective Myers, a seasoned investigator with a long history of child recovery cases, didn't buy the rumor mill for a second. "She's broken," Myers told a colleague. "She's a mother living in a nightmare. But she's not lying. I'd stake my badge on it." Still, the case had stalled. Every lead dried up. No eyewitnesses, no camera footage, no ransom note. And yet the evidence in the restroom raised even more questions than it answered. The shirt and shoes had no dirt on them, even though the bathroom was filthy. A chemical analysis revealed they had been recently washed, though the tag on the shirt had shrunk slightly, suggesting harsh soap or bleach. Someone had deliberately cleaned Ellie's belongings before placing them in that exact position. The restroom itself had no signs of forced entry, but the lock was decades old and easy to pick. Detectives canvassed the area again, this time with cadaver dogs and heat-sensing equipment. Nothing. They interviewed every known sex offender in a 10-mile radius, every disgruntled neighbor, every park employee. Still nothing. But then something strange surfaced. 2 days before Ellie vanished, a local woman named Karen Dilworth had filed a complaint with the city about suspicious activity near the old park restroom. She claimed she'd seen someone, a man, loitering near the building late at night. Tall, wearing a hoodie. She couldn't make out his face, but she remembered he stood still for a long time. Not smoking, not on the phone, just watching. The city had dismissed the complaint at the time. Nothing had come of it. Now that detail felt terrifyingly relevant. Police reviewed footage from surrounding streets, going further back in time this time. One camera caught a grainy glimpse of a dark van parked on a nearby side road that same week. It was seen 3 nights in a row. Same time, same place. The van was never identified, and now neither was the man Karen had seen. All signs pointed to someone watching, waiting, planning. But for what? The deeper they looked, the more Detective Myers began to sense this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment kidnapping. It felt methodical, calculated. And now with the discovery of Ellie's clothing, it also felt ritualistic, as if someone was following a pattern, a cycle. So why return the clothes? Why leave them in plain sight? What was the message? Myers went home that night with those questions clawing at her thoughts. Meanwhile, Rachel sat alone in her living room, the TV off, the room dark. On the coffee table sat a photograph. Ellie, smiling, sticky with ice cream, arms raised toward the camera. Rachel reached out and touched the photo with shaking fingers. "Where are you, baby?" she whispered into the silence. But deep inside her, a mother's intuition flared. Ellie was still out there. She could feel it. She just didn't know that someone else, someone watching very closely, knew she was getting too close to the truth. It happened on a Thursday evening, 5 days after Ellie disappeared. The public had grown restless. Social media had turned from empathy to outrage. People demanded answers, accountability, justice. Police hotlines were flooded with false leads. Tips came in from psychics, conspiracy theorists, and even attention seekers hoping to ride the wave of national coverage. Most were discarded immediately. But one call was different. It came in around 6:47 p.m. The dispatcher nearly dismissed it. A boy claiming he knew where the missing girl was. He sounded young, nervous. At first, she assumed it was another hoax, but then he said something that made her blood run cold. He mentioned the bracelet. "The one with the little yellow beads," he said, "and the star. She dropped it in the woods." That detail was never released to the public. It had only been mentioned in passing during an internal police debrief. Rachel had told the detectives that Ellie wore it every day and that it was missing when they found her shirt and shoes. But that information was never leaked. The boy gave a name, Liam Carson, age 11. He lived just 2 miles from the park. Detectives rushed to his home. It was a modest house on the edge of town, peeling paint and a rusted basketball hoop in the driveway. Liam's parents were cooperative, if deeply confused. His mother insisted Liam hadn't been to the park in over a week. "He's been home every day since the school let out," she said. Detective Myers sat across from the boy in the kitchen, her notepad open but untouched. "Liam," she said softly, "how do you know about Ellie's bracelet?" The boy shifted in his chair, eyes darting to the floor. I didn't mean to get anyone in trouble," he whispered. "You're not," she said. "Just tell me the truth." He hesitated. "Then I heard it from Josh." "Josh?" Liam nodded. "He's my cousin. He's kind of weird. He says things sometimes, creepy stuff." Myers leaned in. "What kind of things?" Liam bit his lip, then whispered. "He said the little girl wasn't scared. Not at first. He said she liked the song." Myers froze. "What song?" Liam looked down. "I don't know. Just that he played it for her." The room went still. Josh was Josh Halpern, age 19. He'd been living with Liam's family for 2 months after getting kicked out of his mother's house across the state. Police ran a background check. No priors, no history of violence.
But there was something else.
His social media profiles had been scrubbed clean 3 days after Ellie vanished. Every post deleted, every image gone, his accounts deactivated. The day Ellie disappeared, Josh had told his aunt he was going out to walk and clear his head. He returned home 6 hours later, sweaty, nervous, and unusually quiet. When asked what he did, he said he went to the lake. He never mentioned Lincoln Park. But that night, according to Liam's mother, Josh had taken a long shower. The next morning, she noticed a scratch on his neck. She'd assumed it was from a branch, or maybe his own nails. She never asked. Detectives obtained a warrant. They searched the basement room where Josh stayed. There, beneath a pile of laundry, they found a flash drive, tucked inside a sock. On it were hundreds of audio files. Most were just ambient sounds. Footsteps, breathing, wind, water. Some were recordings of children laughing, clearly taken at a playground. and one file was simply labeled sunshinegirl.wev. They played it. It began with silence. Then a child's voice, small, sweet. Can you play it again? A man's voice, low and controlled. Of course, you like that one? The sound of music, a soft lullaby, filtered through static. Then the child giggled. Do you want to sing with me?
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. They began singing. A song about the sun, flowers, and butterflies. Ellie's favorite. Detective Myers stopped the recording. She had to step outside and sit down. The voice was unmistakable. It was Ellie. She was alive when that was recorded, and she trusted whoever she was with. The twist was almost too much to process. For days they had assumed the worst. A violent snatch and grab, an opportunistic predator. But this felt orchestrated, intimate, almost like grooming. Josh Halpern was brought in for questioning. He denied everything. He said he didn't know Ellie, never met her, had no idea how her bracelet got into his sock drawer. He claimed the recordings were just sound experiments for a horror podcast he was thinking of making. Myers didn't buy a word of it, but they had no physical evidence tying him to the restroom scene. And Ellie was still missing. They couldn't make an arrest, not yet. But then came the second twist. One of the audio files, buried deep in a corrupted folder, had GPS metadata attached, a digital fingerprint most people don't even realize their device's record. It placed the file's creation 48 hours after Ellie vanished, and just 1.6 miles from Lincoln Park, in a place called Stone Lake Preserve, an abandoned wildlife sanctuary, closed to the public for years, overgrown, forgotten, and now possibly the last place Ellie had been. Detectives mobilized immediately. They would need search teams, dogs, drones. But more than that, they needed time, and they were running out of it. Because if Josh had recorded her voice once, there was a chance he'd done it again. And whatever he was planning, he hadn't finished yet. As soon as Stone Lake Preserve was identified, everything kicked into motion like a synchronized machine fueled by fear and adrenaline. Detective Myers barely slept. The audio file proved Ellie had been there, but that was days ago. Every hour counted. Every minute without action was a minute they might never get back. The preserve was massive, over 200 acres of tangled woods, old trails, dilapidated cabins, and a forgotten visitor center overrun by vines. It had once been a nature haven for school field trips, now left to decay and wildlife. At dawn, a full-scale search was underway. Dozens of officers, FBI field agents, canine units, and volunteers combed through the preserve. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for heat signatures. Ground units moved in tight grids. Everyone worked in radio silence, ears open for the slightest sound, a cry, a shuffle, a voice. Myers led one of the main units. She was no longer just following leads. This was personal now. She kept thinking about the recording. Ellie's voice, that fragile, trusting tone when she said, "Can you play it again?" It haunted her. She had to find her, alive. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, analysts kept feeding new data into the command center. The flash drive Josh tried to erase was being reconstructed by cyber forensics. More files appeared, some damaged, some recovered in fragments. But one thing became clear. Josh had been stalking the playground for weeks. He'd recorded ambient noise, taken blurry photos, and cataloged children's names under fake labels like Red Hat Girl and Yellow Shoes Boy. Ellie had been labeled Sunshine, and Sunshine had more files than the others. Way more. Back at the preserve, dogs suddenly hit on a scent near a collapsed ranger station. Myers got the call. Her team pivoted. The old station was a wooden structure, now half rotted and sunken into the earth. Ivy had swallowed most of the exterior. It smelled of damp wood, rust, and something worse, stale decay. The scent dogs circled a spot near the far side, something beneath the floorboards. "Pry it up," Myers ordered. Officers pulled back the warped wood, revealing a narrow crawl space. At first it looked empty. Then a beam of light caught something reflective. A small plastic water bottle, the kind Ellie's mother said she always carried in her backpack. Suddenly, a voice crackled in from one of the teams positioned 200 yards northeast. "We found something, an opening, possibly a hidden structure underground." Myers bolted toward them, her boots tearing through wet grass. The team stood around what looked like a collapsed septic tunnel entrance, overgrown and half buried under a hill of leaves. A set of fresh boot prints led into the darkness. She stared down. Cold air rushed out from the hole like a breath. They suited up and entered. It wasn't a sewer. It was an old maintenance bunker, likely part of the park's original irrigation system. A series of rooms connected by low tunnels, now damp and echoing. In the third room, they found evidence. A child's blanket, pink and floral, rolled neatly in the corner. A small plastic fork from a kid's lunch set. An empty juice box. And, most chillingly, a taped paper star with the words sunshine written in block letters. But no Ellie. Not yet. Suddenly a voice over the comms. Suspect spotted, eastern perimeter, black hoodie, running. It was Josh. He'd been watching the search, possibly planning to move her again, possibly planning something worse. A foot chase erupted. Officers spread across the terrain like fire. Josh cut through a stream, stumbled, then sprinted up a steep embankment, desperate to escape. But he didn't get far. He was tackled near the rusted fence line by Officer Delgado, who'd been watching the thermal drone. Josh fought hard, wild, and animalistic. He screamed Ellie's name. She was happy. She liked the music. Delgado punched him once, square in the ribs. Josh collapsed. Back at the tunnel, Myers didn't stop. Josh being caught didn't guarantee Ellie's safety. Then when a tiny sound, a whimper, Myers stopped cold. She raised a fist to signal silence, then turned off her flashlight. She listened. Again, a whimper, softer but real, coming from behind a pile of broken concrete near the far wall. She crawled over, pulled a piece aside, and there, beneath an old tarp and insulation foam, was Ellie. She was curled up, her cheeks smudged with dirt, eyes wide and tear-filled. Her little bracelet, yellow beads and a star, glinted faintly in the dim light. Ellie, Myers whispered, voice cracking. You're safe now. I've got you. The girl didn't speak. She just reached out with trembling fingers. Myers scooped her into her arms, shielding her from the musty air, from the darkness, from the nightmare that had devoured the last 6 days. Let's go home, she said. They emerged from the bunker into the gray morning light. News spread in minutes. Ellie Winters found alive. People wept. Strangers embraced. Rachel, Ellie's mother, collapsed in the arms of 2 officers when she heard the news. At the hospital, Ellie was examined, dehydrated, slightly malnourished but alive. No signs of physical abuse, but the psychological toll was immeasurable. She barely spoke for 3 days, and when she finally did, her first word was mommy. Josh Halpern was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, endangerment of a minor, and several federal crimes related to child exploitation. He would never see daylight again. But even in custody, he remained eerily calm. She was special, he said once during an interview. She sang with me. She wasn't afraid. But Ellie had been afraid. She just hadn't shown it. She was brave. Braver than anyone had imagined. That should have been the end. The moment everyone exhaled, the nightmare fading into the rearview mirror. But it wasn't. The physical ordeal had ended, yes. But the aftermath, the emotional wreckage, the deep scars carved into her family's soul, had just begun. Rachel sat beside Ellie's hospital bed the morning after the rescue. The machines beeped softly. Sunlight filtered in through half-drawn blinds. Ellie lay still, eyes open, staring at a ceiling she didn't recognize. She hadn't spoken much, only whispered fragments. It was dark. He told me not to scream. I missed you. Rachel held her daughter's hand, brushing away the matted strands of hair. She didn't cry anymore. She couldn't. Her body had run out of tears. What remained was a trembling calm, the desperate, grateful silence of a mother who got back what she thought she'd lost forever. Psychologists were already involved. The hospital's trauma team worked in shifts. Ellie responded best to a therapy dog named Clover, a golden retriever who never left her side. She started drawing again. At first, her drawings were dark. Black scribbles, monsters in tunnels, stars with angry faces. But slowly, over the weeks, color returned. One day, she drew a picture of herself, holding hands with her mom, standing in a playground. The sky was bright. A son wore sunglasses and smiled down at them. Rachel wept when she saw it. It would be a long road, but they were walking it together. Josh Halpern's arrest sent shockwaves through the community. How could someone so ordinary, so quiet, be capable of something so monstrous? His trial began 6 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensics experts restored nearly 60% of the corrupted flash drive. It showed meticulous planning, weeks of surveillance, and a disturbing obsession with capturing innocence. He never showed remorse. In court, he often smiled faintly, as if proud of the chaos he caused. The prosecution didn't hold back. The lead prosecutor referred to him as a predator who cloaked himself in politeness. He was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Still, the fear lingered. If someone like Josh could do this, who else might be out there? Detective Myers received a commendation from the state for her role in Ellie's rescue. She declined a transfer offer to a larger department. She chose to stay in the town she now felt fiercely protective of. But the case changed her. She started hosting quarterly seminars for parents on child safety, abduction prevention, and online vigilance. One of her messages echoed the loudest. Don't teach your kids stranger danger. Teach them tricky people. Because the real danger doesn't come from strangers in alleys. It comes from familiar faces with dark intentions. Attendance grew every time she spoke. People were listening now. The playground where Ellie vanished was remodeled. New security cameras were installed. A tall fence went up around the perimeter. The town council renamed it Sunshine Park in Ellie's honor. At the entrance, a plaque read, "To those who endure the darkness and find their way back to the light." This park is dedicated to Ellie Winters, whose courage reminded us all how precious our children truly are. Every year on June 12th, the day Ellie was found, the town holds a small festival in the park. Families gather, kids play, and a choir sings songs Ellie loved, like Twinkle, Twinkle and You Are My Sunshine. And Ellie? She smiles now. She runs, plays, and laughs again. She still flinches at loud noises and occasionally wakes up crying from dreams she doesn't want to explain. But she's healing. She's learning that monsters don't win forever. Rachel has become an advocate for missing children and families in crisis. She speaks at schools, contributes to awareness campaigns, and works with a nonprofit that supports families during active search efforts. She carries Ellie's picture in her wallet, not the school portrait, but a candid shot from the week before the abduction. Ellie's laughing, wearing oversized sunglasses and eating ice cream with sticky hands. It's her reminder that joy can return, even after everything. And as for the town, it changed too. For a while, fear settled over it like a fog. Parents held their kids closer, and strangers were no longer just neighbors. But slowly, trust began to rebuild. Because Ellie's story wasn't just one of terror, it was also one of resilience, of love unshaken, of a mother who never gave up, of a detective who wouldn't rest, and of a little girl who endured the unthinkable and came back stronger. In the end, the community learned a painful but vital lesson. Monsters exist, but so do heroes. And sometimes the smallest voices, the ones we almost lose, are the ones that echo loudest through the world.